um, one of my business partners, she has an LLC for one of her businesses.
Mhm.
I have an LLC for one of mine, and then we're gonna do one together. So how do we have to do another LLC, or can we do a DBA under one of our LLCs for both of for like us together, or
You can't do, if you want it to be a business you own equally, it needs to be a new LLC. If
okay.
you want to create a contract that says you're not an owner, but you get 50% profit sharing, you could do that and put it under one of your LLCs.
Mhm.
But that's the only, if it's single member LLCs, you can have as many DBAs as you want, or if it's a partnership LLC, you can have as many DBAs as you want under it. But the tricky part is when you want to change who owns it.
Yeah. So you just have to have like a bunch of LLCs if you have different.
Yeah, so you're probably talking about your new retreat business.
Mm-hmm.
So here's what I would do. If you're in test phase for a business where you are like, let's just try it once, I'd probably put it under somebody's LLC and not go through all those hoops. And
Mm-hmm.
once you know it works and you're like, all right, this is a real thing, then let's move it to its own LLC.
Yeah, that's what we were thinking.
Yeah. So just pick one, have a contract written up that just says, we're testing this under your LLC. If this works and works looks like X, Y, and Z, we're going to split it 50% profit share, and then we will move it to its own LLC. And then that's what I would do.
Yeah. Okay. That's what we were thinking too, but I wanted to get
Yeah.
some feedback from the ladies.
Yeah, that's the bummer part, but because you have so many businesses that are so like you have so many unique partnerships, right, for each of your businesses.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you might want to look at shifting your whole organizational structure anyway, and figuring out a better way to optimize it. Because if people are investors versus managers, they don't need to
Mm-hmm.
own the company. You can pay people out that don't own the company. So you might want to look at that. And I would recommend talking to a like a business lawyer about that, because they would know exactly in California how to best do it.
Mm-hmm.
You just have so many, and I don't know if you need them all.
Yeah, I
So
know.
mhm,
Okay.
that's what I would look at, because lots of paperwork for, maybe no reason.
Yeah, trying to do taxes, we're like,
Yeah. Yeah. All right, guys. Well, good morning. Nice to see everyone who's willing to show their faces this morning. So today is the last conversation about teams. And so far we've talked about why we need teams, how to hire teams, questions to ask when we're interviewing, who we need to be to produce the results we want from our team members. We've talked about how to fire people. We've talked about, not being a boss, but being a coach and what that looks like. So I have two things on my list that are kind of like the final items in this category, but I wanted to know before I go into those two things, is there anything about teams that we haven't covered yet that you would like answers to or guidance on? And it's okay if don't worry if I may have covered it and you weren't there. I would just ask the question and I can tell you either an answer, or I can just recommend watching a video. So I'd rather know what the needs are than not.
I'll just watch the videos and then come back and text you if I have any questions. I've been bad.
No, there's no such thing as being bad. And like I said, I'm happy to answer them. I'm just curious where people are at right now.
Yeah, I have a new challenge that's going to be coming out, so I definitely need to watch those videos.
What's your new challenge?
Well, I got recruited by a headhunter in February to be head of product for a startup out of Ireland.
Yay!
And I got the job and I'm going to take it. So I'm going back to design. but I'm also going to be overseeing development. So if anybody has any tips on that world, that would be great. Merchandising and buying. So from like an
Oh, a few people in this group. Oh my goodness.
can use some help from people. And I might need to have some upskilling on some CADs because I'm a little rusty for the last 3 years working in marketing. Yeah.
Too. Weird. This
So-
whole mind thing, I think, was built for you, Courtney.
I know. So I'm going to have to build a team once I get over there. But that also means that Courtney's Kitchen will have to close because my visa is going to be limited to special skills. But I'm not too sad about that because Courtney's Kitchen has been a very expensive hobby. Although this year is doing better than last year, and last year I almost broke even. So, but just with the job, it doesn't make sense to try to have a side hustle and also try to excel in a startup.
May I give you an advice about that?
Yes, you may.
Okay, so if you're going to kind of close the current Courtney's Kitchen, I think this is actually an opportunity to use your website, whether you change it from DE to .com or whatever you want to do, but to create that website about you that we talked about. Still share your recipes, talk about lifting, like all the things. So I think it's more of an evolution than it is, it might be closing one to open another, but it really is a bridge from where you are right now. So I see huge
Exactly.
opportunities for that.
And that's what I was thinking as well. Like, it's not a complete waste. I have a lot of people that love my granola. So it's, every single one of my customers is a repeat customer. I don't think maybe one or two haven't repurchased. But also I can use that time as a non-eligible freelance or non-eligible employee to do my own thing, to build up that side, and then to do the videos and do the other things without the pressure of sticking to a specific time schedule, and to really kind of create what Courtney's Kitchen could be.
Yeah.
And then being in an English speaking country,
Which would be so cool.
I think will definitely help business.
Yeah.
And Philip can always be the owner of Courtney's Kitchen on paper, if we decide to monetize anything.
Well, and I believe that Ireland also has different things with the US. So you may actually be able to send your granola to the US if it's made there.
That's also good to know. Yeah, I think imports from Ireland are different because those guys, they ship their clothing to the US, no problem. Things I can learn. And also I can learn from guys who built a startup in 4 years. I'm like, so what exactly did you do? What's your secret sauce?
And are you going to be in Dublin area?
Yeah.
Very cool.
So everybody's welcome to visit whenever you can, or you're allowed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's
So
super exciting.
that was my big life-changing news. So it's been kind of a bit of a crazy whirlwind.
When I'm sure, so you probably have a non-compete period and then you go? Or
No, they won't continue working until the end, and I have a 4-month notice. So I'm basically working till end of June and then start in the beginning of July. So it all depends on the visa. And then I told them I'm not moving physically until I have my visa, because I don't want to be homeless in Germany and have to live with Philip's mother.
Yeah.
So yeah, so we're doing that, and they're quite cool about I'm like, we're all working from home, so it shouldn't matter where I am to start. It's gonna be, I think, a little bit chaotic, but we'll figure it out.
Yeah. I don't know. To me, it's so exciting. I love new adventures. So I get to
Figured, and literally 5 people at Audi have told me to, if you want to come back, if you hate it after 6 months, you have a job. We will always have a spot for you. Just let us know.
That's good. Look at win, win, win.
Exactly. So it's like the safety net's there, and I could flee and jump, and yeah. And I would, your post when it was all about asking for your worth or whatever, I was like, no, this is the money I deserve, because I need to make sure the cost of living is expensive. I need to make sure I'm comfortable in my home. This is what and I'm doing a shit ton of work for you. So, and they're like, let me talk. Okay. And we'll keep your bonus structure and everything. So like,
All right. I love it. I love it. Okay. So definitely go back and watch the team videos for sure.
Yeah.
So anyone else, team issues before we run out of time today? No, nothing to apologize for. I'm super excited. You just juiced up the whole group. Okay, so what we haven't talked about in regards to teams is how do we make room to actually be a leader? How do we actually build in that we have to manage people and coach people? Because usually we skip over putting that into our schedule. So the quick answer to that is that whenever we bring somebody onto our team, if we're onboarding a new person, we do need to assume that the next 3 weeks of our calendar is going to have about 25% of our time going to them. So we just need to make the shifts, right? And someone's coming, clear the schedule, give them the time they need, because a proper onboarding is always more effective than not. Then when it goes to they're onboarded, now what? We need to leave room for managing people. So in a corporate setting, if you're, what's that?
Sorry. I didn't realize I was on unmute. I didn't realize I was unmuted. I'm talking to the cat.
It's okay. So then in a corporate setting, if you're managing a team, it depends on how big the team is, but let's say you're managing 8 people, 70% of your time should be making sure that they are going to succeed, and 30% of your time should be you doing your own work. And that's not how it's normally set up. And that's why things are not operating at where they could. So if we go back to the NBA example, 70% of a coach's time is with you at practice, you at training. What do you need? Let's reset. Let's work on your mindset. How do I move things out of your way? Is how a coach spends 70% of their time. 30% of the time is them talking to the office. We're doing their own work, planning things, and all shifts, right? So if a coach has a team of coaches, like everyone in the NBA does, right? He gets a little bit of that time back, but he still needs to be managing his coaching staff in addition to the team. So we need to make sure that the majority of the time is set up where we are empowering the people on our team versus us doing the work. If you're hiring a team, you should be hiring them for maintenance work, not for strategic work necessarily, right? We want to make sure that you need both, but usually who we're hiring is people to support us with ongoing maintenance work. Those are the people who need onboarding and who need the recurring leadership time from you. If you're working with experts, yes, they still require onboarding, but it's less, usually like a 4-hour window, maybe 2-hour blocks or something. For example, if you're onboarding a social team, there is onboarding, but you don't need to manage them all the time. But you should plan for like an hour a week to do interactions with them or to update them on things. If it's people on your team doing maintenance, that's when they need the 70-30%. And I imagine Kendra's experiencing this right now, which is why she's working and listening, right? So, we have to assume that if they don't need the 70%, awesome. That means we get extra time to work on one of our projects or to spend more time doing what we need to, but we should assume that they're going to need that support. Smaller teams, if you don't have 8 people, if you have 3 people on your team, it can be less, right? But you need to plan it out. So for example, on my team, I have about 1 hour per person built into my schedule per week that we're working together one-on-one. And often it's more, right? So I touch base with my integrator every day except Monday. We have a 10-minute call on the schedule, which might be 10 minutes. It could be 30 minutes, depending on where things are at. Plus we have a 1 hour to dive into things. Plus we're emailing back and forth, right? So when I really look at how many hours of communication there can be a lot. And that's why it's important to make sure that communication is optimized so that once we have that call, they can run with all the tasks that they have. Same with my graphic designer, right? We have at least a 30-minute call a week, if not an hour. Just make sure we're aligned, what's next, what's happening. We can make some calls together, review some designs. There's options, but it's built into my schedule just like everything else is. But when we look at that conversion, spending an hour with somebody a week, what should it help us do? It should allow them to work for 10, 20, 40 hours without needing us, right? So the 1 hour investment is always worth it when you look at doing it. The reason it feels like it's not worth it is when we're trying to do too much of the work ourselves and not move ourselves into an oversight position. There's a woman I have right now as a private client who we're building her a bigger team for her right now and kind of for the first time. And the hardest thing that she has to go through, right, is moving the things that she's always done to like give them to somebody else and she just reviews it. When you do that for the first time, it's a hard process. But once you do that, like that's how you set yourself up space so that you can focus on the bigger projects. Questions about this? Okay. The other thing we haven't talked about is what happens, like we talked about firing, but sometimes your team needs to change for other reasons. Your team could change because your business has shifted and you need to lay people off. It could be that the roles you need has shifted and the people don't match those roles anymore. So what do we do? Any thoughts?
Well, it's tricky. If you like the people, then you can also see if they can be shifted to another position. Be like, hey, this is what needs to be shifted, but we want to keep you on. How do you feel about doing something different? Or you could do it the Adidas way of just shift somebody and don't ask them and then expect them to do the work and like it.
Yes, which may be them saying we like you, we just didn't bother asking you. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's hard, right? Because if you're, oh, go ahead, Miranda.
I was just going to say, like, having the weekly or the daily, depending on the role, touch base with them, you really kind of figure out what their strengths are, what they like doing, what they don't like doing. And sometimes, I mean, depending on if you're willing to work with the person, if you have the time, sometimes you can move them into a totally different role and they like thrive at it. I've had that happen before and it's awesome to like see it happen and see the person grow, where you're like, I'm about to fire you. And then you change their role and they just kick ass.
Yeah.
But I think it's all about communication, like open communication, and really finding out from them what they like doing, and not so much just like being like, you're fucking up, you're doing this wrong, you know.
No, that's a great point, right? Because all of us we all care, right? We had to have a whole conversation about being more mean because everyone here wants to care so much, right? And wants to be nice and wants the work environment to be the best it can be. So one thing we have to be careful about is that we don't shift our business to be someone else's dream job if that dream job doesn't really exist. That's a really hard temptation to avoid, because if you love somebody in your team and you're like, oh, they would be an incredible fill in the blank, but you don't need that role, that's where we have to be careful with ourselves of like, should I move this person into their dream job if I don't need it? My answer would be no. If you don't need it, it doesn't exist. But there's always other alternatives, moving them into that role part-time and maybe they get to work for somebody else part-time, or how do you make it work? And I do want to make sure that when we are a small business and we have people in our team, we need to err on being selfish. If we're selfish and fulfilling what we need and the business needs, it'll automatically create a space where people can flourish in the roles that do exist. So making sure that, hey, if something's not working, we can figure out pretty quickly if a role is or isn't a fit. Or if oh, actually, I thought I needed this job filled, but actually it looks more like this over here. I would make those adjustments pretty quickly. So just like other projects, set hard deadlines to just make decisions and shift things. I wouldn't let something go longer than 6 weeks to 3 months if you're in this testing phase of like, oh, let me see, let it shake out. Don't let it go beyond 3 months without addressing it in some capacity. Obviously, if there's breakdowns in workability, it should be addressed much sooner. And if something's not working, we want to, and you know it, stop it as soon as you know it. But if you have a new hire and you're like, okay, I thought this was the role, maybe it looks a little bit different. Give it a few months to see how it shifts, but not so far that you're spending all this money that you don't need to. So between 1 month and 3 months, you choose based on the investment you're making, how much is impacting your business, et cetera. Because sometimes we set up roles that we've never had filled before, and it turns out actually we need something else. So we just need to be, as you said, Miranda, honest and transparent. And letting people know like it's a startup or it's a small business and things move much faster here than anywhere else. So flexibility and coachability are required no matter what role anybody has. Another reason why roles can change is because of automations, right? Or your efficiencies get better. If you hire a VA type of person or a maintenance type of role, sometimes their job is to figure out how to do it as streamlined as possible and then delegate it to a program, an app, or a machine. This happens, right? So if somebody's good at that and doing it, and oh, they love doing email marketing, but you've set it all up and now it's automated, what can they do? There's always an opportunity to look at how they transfer those skills to another part of your business that needs it, and maybe to another project. If they did a great job launching this project and implementing it, move them to another one. There's never a shortage of tasks. So if they're good at those things, put them somewhere else that needs that exact process to happen, even if the skills are different, because they'll have learned so much. What else? What else about teams haven't we covered, or questions about these two areas?
Do you, are you a proponent of bringing someone on, like freelance, like a temp to perm thing? I mean, almost all the jobs that I've had, they've wanted to do that. I mean, I've always been like, I'm good staying temporary, but I used to think that it was kind of whack, and now I'm kind of like, it's a good way for everybody to see if they like it there first. And you know, like you can see, okay, is this working? They can see if the person that they're working with is working, and then kind of move them to something more permanent.
I think in a small business, I encourage everybody to do a 3-month test period so that you have that kind of temp part, right? So you're testing them for 3 months, you're making sure they fit in the role, you're making sure the role works the way you want it to, you're making sure that you like them, they like you. So I always do a 3-month window. And then after that, we can make a more permanent contract. Because I think it's important to always test. Temp to permanent so that might be, it kind of is a temp to permanent kind of situation. I just don't want, we're always looking at how do we optimize what we're doing as CEOs and business owners or leaders, and continuing to train people and hire people is not really efficient. So I think doing temp to permanent is good, assuming that you're like, I think I made the right choice. Like, I want this to be permanent. But if you're just filling a hole and you have to keep training people, or people keep saying, no, thank you, it wouldn't be the best path. So does that make sense?
Well, what do you mean by having to keep training people?
So if we look at the roles that we need on our teams, there's always that onboarding process, right? And so when you're onboarding someone, you're giving them a lot more of your time than you will once they're kind of permanent and in the flow. You still need to give them time, but it should be less. So if you have to keep onboarding new people and helping them work out the efficiencies and figure out how you work, there's a lot of the relational things that need to get worked out in an onboarding process. And if we want to make sure that we're not continuing to bring on new people in the same roles where we have to keep training them, onboarding them, and going through that whole process of learning how it works. Because then instead of being a CEO, we end up becoming like an HR manager.
Right.
So that's why when we look at like the internship programs that I recommend, they overlap. So one intern trains the other so that you only have to train the first intern ideally, and like they keep going. Same with like Kendra's world with her production team. She trains these people and they can train them. And like, so you're not in the training space all the time. Because it does take a lot of time. So we want people who are on board and efficient. That's also why it's so much more expensive to bring somebody new on. Like turnover is expensive in a company, more because of time than
Mhm.
anything else.
That's
Yeah,
also like commitment level too. Like if you're like temp to perm, it's like, well, maybe we'll do it if it works out. Like we could, whatever. I feel like if you're in a 90 days, like contract kind of thing to start, it's more like a commitment level. Like here's what we're committed to. We commit to you long term. Like our business is committed, and here's our expectations. And if you meet them, let's keep going. Versus like, I don't know. I'm just making that up, but it sounds like a commitment level too.
is it just the lingo? Because I kind of feel like temp to perm feels the same way to me. Like if you're saying, okay, 90 days and then we'll talk.
Mhm. Yeah, 100%. I do think it's very similar. It's just different words. So I think Kendra brings up a good point of like doing a trial period means like we want you, you want us. Let's like double check. Where
Mhm.
the permanent might sound like it's easier to leave than a trial period. So it's just like, how are people coming in? Like, I'm saying yes, I don't really know, but let's try it out.
Mhm.
Versus I'm saying yes because I want this, and like, okay, I understand that there's a trial period. So it's just a matter of like, what commitment are people making to you and what are you making to them, right? Like,
Could you create,
Long-term dating versus marriage.
well,
Yeah.
can you create like a contract when hiring somebody? Because like in Germany, I think that's one of the actually, not one of the good things, but one of the good things being here is with all contracts, even with my new one, you have a 6-month kind of test period within the contract, obviously. So they have, within the first 6 months, if you don't fulfill what you need, then they can terminate the contract. After that, it becomes a lot more difficult, and there's like a notice period that needs to be given. I don't know, like I know in the States you have like, can be fired in like 2 weeks time, or I don't even know if you need a notice. But is there something where you could create like contracts with like something similar so it doesn't sound so like dating-ish, like, well, we'll try it out and see if it fits, and if it does, then great. If not, then sorry. Like, you know, like maybe in like a way when you hire somebody, just be like, we do a temporary, like a trial period, and to see if it's a great fit for you and me. So it doesn't make it seem like, you know, it's like a short-term relationship or whatever.
That's how ours are, because a lot of ours are short term as it is.
Okay.
So ours have dates on them with the option to extend.
Yeah. So Mikkel, it's really just a matter of how people are going into it. If they're going into it like, I want this, and I do want to say it, I understand that I have to prove myself for the temp period. Awesome. And then on your side, it's, I want you, and I'm going to double check during the temp period, right? Like, I think that's just the flip. Because so often when we hear temp in the US, no one really wants their temp job. They're just doing it as a placeholder to before they find the thing they want. At least that's been my experience. So like people who are filling in temp, if it's been in like the fashion area, when people fill in for temp roles, they usually want that role, but they can't have it because somebody's on maternity leave or something else. But in non fashion spaces, when people have temps, like when VAs temp, or even graphic designers that have been on like the marketing side versus the product side, they've just kind of been there because they needed cash, but they were still looking for their dream job the whole time. So I want to make sure that when we're choosing people, we're choosing people that want to be there for at least a year, because we got so much to do. like, you know, I want to train somebody and know like I can rely on that. But I still do the 90-day thing because I want there to be an opportunity for us to equally try as hard as we can for 90 days. And if it doesn't work, it's okay. You know, like that's the safety valve, but we're going to go into it being like, we're here for this amount of time, and that's what we're doing. So does that make sense? That distinction? Yeah. But if that distinction's in there, temp to permanent, then I think then it's okay. It's the same. What else? We're 2 minutes over. Any final needs for teams? I think there's a chat question. Courtney, go ahead.
Yeah, I had a question. So one of the guys that that's gonna be reporting into me is one of the CEOs of the company.
Why is he reporting into you?
I think it's the way they have the position structured, from my understanding. So it's head of product and design. So under that is they have design, development, and then they have buying and merchandising, which to me is also like, okay. But I think they also don't understand how garment industries are built or structured typically. So that's how they have it at
When
the
I was
current.
at Zebra, I was head of product and I had all that under me too.
Okay.
Yeah.
But he's head of buying, so he's one of the CEOs. So he's not like but he's basically one of the founders, but he likes being head of buying. So then, that's for me. Like, how do you manage that? Because I've never had that situation to make sure that, checking in and making sure they're growing and getting what they need, even if it's something I don't have experience in.
Great question. We probably need a whole session about that. But the short-term answer would be, if he's on your team, treat him the same way as everybody else. My guess is part of why he's the head of buying is because he's controlling the money. So
Mm.
he's probably head of buying, so he can say yes or no to what checks go out the door. I don't know anybody that is like, my dream job is buying, like, or being head of buying, because usually it's like managing spreadsheets and managing the money. So I think
I think he's also like sourcing too. So I think that it's like could
Mhm.
be a sourcing role. I'm gonna have to do some deep dive into like what everybody does.
Yes.
How
And my guess as well with it being a startup is that who reports to who will continue to shuffle for infinity. So
Yeah.
be prepared for that. But I would treat him like everybody else. And listen, managing people doesn't mean that you know everything that they do. It just means that you're creating the space for them to be awesome and have what they need and understand how it's all connected. So asking questions and listening is like the best thing you can do for all the people on your team. And then if you don't know what they do, spend time sitting down with them and ask them, how do you do it here? That's one of my like cheat questions in interviews. Like if they bring up a phrase or like an acronym, I'd be like, I don't know if I've heard of that acronym. Can you explain what that means here? And usually it's always something that you've had access to. So ask everyone in your team, how do you guys do it here? Because one thing I'll tell you, going from huge companies to small ones, nothing will operate like Audi does. Nothing. Like, titles will be different, roles will be different. The processes, like
There's
literally,
no process.
right. My guesses are they don't have line plans. They don't really have merchandising plans. They don't have a calendar.
Yeah.
Like I can
Which is,
probably tell you
I can bring in all sorts of things and be awesome. Very easy.
exactly. So I would go into it imagining that this new company is more like Courtney's Kitchen than like Audi.
Oh.
So just ask a lot of questions. I see Miranda nodding her head because she's even gone to like bigger small companies to support them. And when I went from Puma to Quicksilver DC Land, I was shocked. I'm like, how are you making this much money? You don't have core fundamentals. Like, yeah. And that's a huge company still.
Amazing. It's amazing. Many companies that operate like on a shoestring, and you come in there thinking that they know all this stuff, and they're like, no, we actually brought you in because we don't know.
That's what they said on the interview. They're like, we don't know what we're doing. We need your help. And I'm like, okay, sure.
Well, if you need some consultants, Miranda and I are expert product consultants. So let us know.
I will let you know, definitely. We'll let you know as I get closer and more into it and understand what I've gotten myself into.
Yeah. I literally went from like bigger to smaller companies in my career, right? And the last one being, we don't know what we're doing, but let's make products for influencers because it makes a lot of money.
Okay. I think the best thing will be quicker decision making.
Yeah.
Because the Germans don't make decisions quickly.
No. And I think one of the things to watch out for with that too is reminding everybody that we should maybe sleep on an idea versus like decide everything in this meeting because we all said yes and then do it. You're like, hold on, like let's sleep on it so we can make sure we didn't just spend $1 million for no reason.
Yep.
But yeah, we could probably do a whole clinic on working for a startup versus being the startup.
Yeah.
Well, I'm really excited to kick off on Thursday our new whole month category of sales and doubling our business. We'll also talk on Thursday about the sales contest that we're doing, which will run through April, May, and June. So we'll launch that so you guys can know exactly what the rules are and how you can play. I did post a message in the board about what you guys want for prizes. I think like 1 or 2 people responded. So there's options to have like cold hard cash. There's options to get other fun things. So please tell me what you would want for winning a sales contest. A vacation. Perfect. Yeah. So that will happen on Thursday. And yeah, I know I owe you guys some worksheets for this month. They're coming. And once they're all posted, I'll let you know. Any questions or needs today? All right, guys, go and be awesome. Courtney, congratulations. We're excited about your new adventure.
Thank you.
And then I'll see you guys on Thursday.
Have a
Bye.
great day, everybody.
You too. Bye.